battalion.
Hold on a minute, I want to fix something. Okay.
Was living in some brick barracks at Fort Francis E. Warren out of Cheyenne, about a couple miles out of Cheyenne, Wyoming. And normally I got up on Sunday morning to get the breakfast. It was usually a pretty good breakfast, but for some reason or other I overslept and didn't get up for breakfast. And when I came down about 10 o'clock, seemed as though there was some rumor that somebody had heard a radio report of it or something, and nobody was very excited about it, but we weren't sure it was true. But I was dressed in Class A uniform, and I was going downtown to meet a girl that I had a halfway date with, who was a friend of the wife of Sergeant Don Locke in my outfit. Knew she was going to be there, so I went down. Don wasn't. He was on duty or something. So I caught a bus downtown Cheyenne and went up to their little apartment, and another girl, another wife of a 180 field artillery soldier was there, so these three gals, and I'd give them an awful song and dance. I said that the 188th was going to move right out, and they were going to drive their trucks right onto boats on the west coast and sail for Manila, Philippines. And I made the thing up right out of the blue sky. Made a good story out of it. Damned, about 80% of it were true. This one gal, I can't even remember her name, and I were going back out to the post theater. You'd see a late run movie for 10 cents out there. And I think the bus cost another 10 cents. But we rode the bus back out to Fort Warren and went to the movie, and when the movie was over, like about 4 o'clock, they turned the lights on, and a master sergeant got up on the stage, and he had a clipboard, and he said, "All men of the following units will report to your unit at once." And it included the 188th. And this gal was with me. Well, she said, "I can go home alone." She said, "Nah," I said, "I'll take you back." And while we were on the bus going back down to Cheyenne, here the Wyoming State Police cars with amplifiers on them, driving up and down the streets. "All men of the following units report to your unit at once." And again, they mentioned my unit. And we got back down to this Locke's apartment, and he had a little radio, and we turned it on to KOA Denver, and here's another appeal to for those soldiers stationed at Fort Warren, Wyoming. "All men of the following units report to your unit at once." So I had about 3 warnings to report to my unit. I paid no attention to them, and finally, I don't know, at about midnight, I went back to the outfit, and my first sergeant jumped on me all over. "Haven't you heard these orders?" And no, I said, "I didn't hear nothing." He couldn't prove it. So, well, he said, "Get that white shirt off and get to work. We're packing up to leave." It was Sunday night, really Monday morning. And I don't know when Jack and Dad called, but they wanted to know where I was doing, and they came right down to Fort Warren.
By that time, did you know about Pearl Harbor?
Oh yes, everybody knew about Pearl Harbor then.
So
it happened that morning.
That morning. Well, when you went to the movie, had you known about Pearl Harbor?
Oh, sure.
So were you in bed? Were you at the camp when you first heard the announcement?
It was after I got up. I went down to the kitchen. That's when I first heard the rumor. But by that time, they didn't have much information. See, but during the day, he was on all the radios all day long.
So you were in Cheyenne, Wyoming.
That's right, at Fort Francis E. Warren. And we immediately started dismantling our beds, and we went to temporary sleeping and turned in all our dishes. We went to our field eating utensils, and Tuesday morning about 10 o'clock we pulled out in Convoy.
This was a Monday?
No. Well, it was Sunday it happened, but
Sunday it happened.
it was Monday by the time I reported back to the barracks.
Oh, it was.
Midnight.
Oh,
see?
midnight, Monday. Okay.
And I don't know when Father and Jack got there, but they were there for seemingly most of Monday. But I can't remember.
Did they come because they heard the...
Yeah, they come because I was going to leave and they wanted to say goodbye before I left, see. And, but we pulled out of Fort Francis E. Warren about 10 o'clock Tuesday morning, if I remember correctly. And we were in Convoy headed for Fort Lewis, Washington. And it was bitterly cold. And we were riding those Army trucks in no heat. But fortunately, just about a week before, we'd all been issued winter clothing by the Army. And that was an indication to us that we'd probably be spending the whole winter at Fort Warren. Because the weather was cold, and they issued you uniforms to accommodate the weather you'd be in.
Well, wait a minute. Was Fort Francis Warren, that wasn't in Cheyenne?
Well, no, Cheyenne is different. Cheyenne is the city right next to it, see?
Oh, okay. But you were headed for
Fort Lewis.
Fort Lewis.
That's way out in the Puget Sound.
In Seattle. You were headed for Fort Lewis, really, when you were on Convoy.
And boy, the rumors were flying. We weren't even going to shut our trucks off. We're going to drive them right aboard these ships and sail for Madrid or Manila. And that's what I told these girls without any offense knew. Well, we got out west of Cheyenne in that high mountain plateau on the highway there, and we weren't making very good time, about 35 miles an hour. And we went to, and I think it was Laramie we went into, but I can't remember for sure. And we were going to camp in the fairground. And they pulled the whole convoy in there and parked them, and it was, well, of course, 7th of December, the days were real short, and it was about dark when we got in there. And I was attached to the maintenance section, and part of our equipment was blowtorches. And you could take a blowtorch, and without firing it up, it had raw gasoline that shot out about 4 or 5 feet, and we chopped up some old bridge planks that were all rotten that were piled up there, and it was so hard. The wind was blowing at 20 below, and oh, it was miserable. But we took these blowtorches and shot the gasoline, the raw gasoline, into the wood, and boy, it started burning pretty good. We got a good fire going, and our maintenance section was the only one that got a fire going. And then the order came down, and CSMO, that meant closed station march order. And here we were getting ready to stay overnight, pitch our pup tents on that frozen ground, and somebody decided with authority that we'd be just as comfortable moving as to stop there and camp. So they fed us, they had a meal, they were cooking on the trucks on the way, and they fed us that meal and gassed up the trucks and started out again. And
From Laramie.
From Laramie, or wherever it was. Up the line in Wyoming. And so I crawled into a truck that had some oil barrels on it, and I crawled in on top of the oil barrels where I could lie down. But the edges of the barrels stuck into my ribs or whatever I had. And it kind of hard, but I get my hips in the middle of a barrel and then have the edge there where I had a little room to. And I had clothes enough to where I kept fairly warm. And that's where I traveled most of the way. But they'd have a breakdown of a truck, maybe take out an axle or something. So they'd promptly get another truck and tied to it and drag it along, and we got to Pocatello, Idaho. And there somebody made arrangements in the big GMC garage to put all the broken down trucks there, and see, we're the battalion maintenance section. So we were carrying the mechanics and the parts truck and the... So they pulled our section out of the main convoy and they went on. And we spent till about 3 o'clock that night fixing those trucks that were broke down. And finally got them all fixed up and convoyed out of there about 3 o'clock. I don't know, can't remember whether we caught the rest of our outfit or maybe caught them once when they stopped somewhere or something, I don't know. But we convoyed without stopping except for heating and gassing up the trucks and those necessary stops. We never stopped to sleep anywhere between Cheyenne, Wyoming and Tacoma, Washington.
Fort Lewis, huh?
Fort Lewis.